Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Wolf, and this is another episode of Voices in Recovery, where I talk to people that have lived experience with homelessness, addiction, and are now in recovery to tell us the truth about recovery, how they found recovery, and what we can, as a community and as a society, can do better to support people that are trying to find that pathway to wellness. So today, my guest is David. David is a friend of mine. David is in recovery and he also has experience homelessness in San Francisco. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about his story and about what we can do better in San Francisco to address the crisis that is on our streets. So, welcome, David. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas.
David, would you mind just telling me a little bit about your story? How did you originally fall into addiction?
I grew up in the Central Coast of California, and addiction was like in my family in the late 60s, early 70s. Heroin use wasn't foreign to me, I guess. I had uncles that are in and out of prison and stuff like that. And my brother, my family, yeah, it's, yeah, definitely was introduced to that. I think most of my life I resisted it and just had a path of my own. And then, yeah, it was there. It was there. So it's definitely a family disease. So my introduction to any like addictive, my alcoholism was I started drinking early on, 12 years old. And from there, it ventured into drinking at school. But I remember like clearly the first time I gotten drunk at a family event that I had that relief. I forget that feeling of I could finally be myself. I grew up in fear. Everything was fear based, like my whole childhood was. So, in drinking the alcohol, all that fear and the anxiety went away. Yeah, man, that was my solution. I started suffering consequences because of my drinking actions, like getting in trouble with the law. So basically, like in high school, I had a probation officer that would come visit me. I think I was probably like one of the only one kids in my school that had a probation. I had to check in with probation every week. Yeah, high school was like, hey, they're all like, Mr. Barrios, you're going on a field trip today. And this is like in the early 80s. And they took me to the California Men's Colony to a Scared Straight program. I was like, there's my field trip. Yeah, so it was prominent. My mindset at the time was I was I felt like I had just I was always in survival. I wanted to be away from my family because that's where like the abuse was. I had a lot of resentment. So, like this is my childhood and my teenage years or in high school I'd end up like being violent. I don't know where that came from. It's probably what I know and I'm not trying to make excuses for any of my behaviors. I vicariously through the years of my life that I tried to seek happiness through different relationships with women and like whatever I can. I was always looking for an outside entity to fix what was wrong with inside. And inside me, through my whole life, was a big gaping hole that I couldn't stuff enough stuff to patch the hole, to feel just to feel a part of or normal or whatever people are. Yeah, that was yeah, every day I was like I would be the guy in the crowd that was the loneliest guy in the crowd. I know that feeling of you could see pictures of me and my family, like they're all together, and I'm off in the distance sitting, like staring at this into space. Like, I just didn't want to be there. I didn't want to even be in my skin. Like I just like hoping to die or like yeah, that was my life. I'm trying to paint a picture of the miserable existence I had.
And when you sought that relief in other things, you talked about relationships, women, things like that. Did that
Yeah.
include other kinds of drugs other
Uh
than alcohol?
oh yeah, yeah. Alcohol popped out and then all of a sudden I got introduced to pills and that was like most people like would do pain pills for pain. I did it because it made me feel the pain. It's like I wanted to live in that. I wanted to be in that, like constantly numb, so I can get through life with my daily grind. So the pills, in turn, like it started off with the Vicodin, the Norcos, lower tabs, and then all of a sudden, like OxyContin hit the scene.
Mhm.
It was a whole different animal. It was a whole different. Next thing, I went to pain clinics to get prescriptions for OxyContin. By that time, I was like so far addicted to them. I would get when I was at the pain clinic at the height. So this is, mind you, in my late 30s.
So what year was that?
Oh God, that's 90, 90, and then 90. Let's see, 90, 93, 94. And so at the height of my getting my pills, so they were prescribing me 280 oxycontin 80s a month, 90 fentanyl 1600 milligram suckers. What else? They I think somas. So this
Wow.
is this, and I did that for 10 years.
So
I had
that's a pain clinic. So that's the 90s version of Safe Supply, I guess you could say, because you're going to a clinic and someone's actually prescribing or
oh yeah,
over prescribing those medications to you.
oh yeah, that was my life for 10 or 15 years was those pills. Like how I and it I know at the end of that long run that I would go to the pharmacy and I would like by that time I would be out of them and I'd be hurting and I would like immediately snort 5 oxycontin 80s just to get right
Wow.
so well. And people
Yeah.
were like my brother and them, they were just like my whole family was strung out, so they were just like, whoa. Like I think my brother, yeah, he still talks about that today. Like he doesn't understand. So going to the pharmacy, getting my oxycontin, so I'd snort 5 of them and put 2 fentanyl suckers in my mouth.
Wow.
Yeah, that was just that was a good day for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know like the oxycontin and the fentanyl, all that stuff, your body like gets used to it. Now it's my body's addicted to it. My body needs it. So I'm like full blown addiction. And even if I did had a good day, I was just getting I wasn't getting high. I was just maintaining stay not getting sick. And pharmaceutical medicine like that, pharmaceutical grade, from my experience, that stuff gets in your bones. It's not like street drugs where you're getting cut and everything. This is like pure laboratory. Like that stuff, it was hard to kick.
I
It was
bet.
it was like hard to kick. Yeah. So then I remember when they took the Oxy 80s off the street, the OCs,
Hmm.
and they went to OPs, and I was getting those, and they weren't working for me. Like that was like a whole. I can't. That they put like wax in them. Like I would Google like how to slam them, how to snort them, put them in the microwave. I was like experiencing any way to get that like form of opiate in my body without time release and all that stuff. So I did that for 6 months, 8 year, and then finally I was like, heroin came in on the scene. That was it. Like, okay, get good heroin. Like, it's equivalent. It's a lot more than what oxy was actually. You have yours. You're familiar with that, right? Like,
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with it. I have 24 scars on my body from intravenous drug use to prove it. So
yeah. So you know what I'm talking about when it
yeah.
comes. And from that point on, same thing, man. The heroin, it took its course. Like, it was good at first, and then all of a sudden, like, it was doing the job, and then it was fulfilling that hole, that black hole in my soul, and I had to do it every day until it was just barely working. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
couldn't get over the hump that I wanted to get over.
And so while all this was happening, could you describe the quality of your life? Were you slipping into homelessness? Were you hanging by a thread? Were you going to jail? What was happening to you?
That's a good question. So I was in my heroin use. I wasn't welcome anywhere. I was homeless. I preferred to be homeless. At that point in my life, like, a good tent by the creek with some drugs was my living my best life. So that was a good day for me. Yeah, and I started. Well, you have to support your heroin use, and I'm not making any excuses, but I had to start. I started stealing from the stores at 46 years old. I started boosting stuff constantly, like every day. It was just that was a pattern, and I was in for years. Nobody wanted me around. At your worst, would you want yourself around?
No. In
Honestly,
fact, as much guilt that I felt from being away from my family and on the street, I knew that it was better for them if I was out there as
I felt
opposed to being with them.
I felt the same way, man. I'm almost
Yeah.
gonna. I think about it, and I'm not feeling sorry for myself. Yeah, man, I'm so grateful, like, for the life I have today. Like, it's so much different. And being homeless, and it's so funny being an addict in recovery and having a good day, and then I'll take off the freeway, and I'll see a tent, and I'll go, man, that, like, like, part of me is like, wish I was in that tent getting high.
Yeah.
You had that?
Yeah, because I when I was working in the Tenderloin early in my recovery, I would get these days where I felt like it would be easier just to walk away from this shit and just go back out there
Oh
and
yeah,
sleep in a doorway and shoot dope because then I don't have any responsibility.
your mind, having an addict mind. I am so grateful that you are out of that and I'm out of that lifestyle. But if you lived it, so it's there. Does that make sense to you? Like, it's, what relief. I guess the best way I can put it is that rituals. Like, people have rituals. So for me, a ritual would be like getting up, slamming, like, whatever, like a cotton or something like that, trying to get up to get mobile, to go steal some stuff, then to finally go score some heroin, and then go back into my little spot and fix that up and slam it, and just know when I slammed it, I was going to get that relief from all the pain that I was enduring.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's a ritual like that. People could get addicted to that too as well. And I learned, and it's funny, I'm gonna jump, but in recovery, like being in recovery, I learned so much about myself.
Yeah. How many years total were you out on the street kind of running and gunning?
I guess at the end, probably maybe 2 to 3 years. I've been clean and sober up here in San Francisco for 8 years. And when I go back home, you would think I would see some of the people that I hung out with when in my using, and nothing's changed. Like, the only thing that, like I notice is that all of like they're missing their teeth. And
Yeah.
these are 37, 40-year-old, you know, kids, and they're still on the streets living that life. It's been 8 years. And and I can only when they have called, I can only my solution is you need to come up here and come to a program. Like I can only direct them like what helped me. And yeah, it's sad. It's
So how did you find recovery? Like, what happened to you? Was there like a breaking point, or you made a decision, or you were pushed, or what?
that's a good one too. But lo and behold, I'm 48 years old. I'm going into stores and stealing stuff, and I just walk in and walk out like I was like the desperation in me was like I didn't care if I got arrested or anything. Like it that so yeah, eventually I got caught at stealing stuff. So I had my first arrest, and so then I was on probation. So I got into that probation cycle. Like I got and they let me out, and then I go on a run. And it's funny, I would get locked up, and I would have to kick heroin like cold turkey. I remember sitting on the like laying on the dirty floor in jail, looking up. I looked up and I could see that people kicking alcohol. I was like, oh man, like they're shaking like that with
Yeah.
trembling and stuff, and I'm sweating and barfing, and I'm like, oh man, at least I'm not them. That's a trip. But so my biggest fear was kicking heroin. I was so afraid of it, and I finally kicked it the first time. I was like, oh, it wasn't that bad. And then I got out immediately, like when your brother and your son and your nephews are all using, and that's where I got where they let me out to. I couldn't stay clean,
Yeah.
at that point. And then start going on another run. And by this time, I'm on probation, and they're after me constant. They're after. I don't know. I felt like I had a big like mark on my back or something. Like, they're just like everywhere they'd pop up. And the funny thing too was about probation. Like I thought if I was sincerely honest with them, like I told 'em, man, I got a problem, dude. Like I need help. Like, you
Yeah.
know, I can't I don't know any other way to live. And they kind of I felt bad because they kind of like used that against me at
Oh,
times. Like they knew like I was looking for help, and they didn't direct me to go get help. You know what I
right.
mean?
Right.
They didn't like, "Oh, this go to this program, go to that program." They're just like, "No, you stay clean. We're gonna come test you and arrest you." That was a constant thing. So I remember the third time, and the police in my area, they finally knew, that I was on the radar. Like they see me, they pull me over. That's just automatic. And like the it got so bad that like they would sit there and just lecture me like, "Oh, Mr. Barrios, you have a chance for your life. You just got to get right." And I'm like, "Okay, like I get it, but how am I going to do that? Like you could tell me, but I don't know how." And so finally at the end of my last run, and it was a really bad one, I was 168 pounds. By this time I was smoking meth as well.
Hmm.
So meth was like kind of look at it as my decline. Like it threw me it threw me down the worst. And so I was there, I was ready. I was desperate. I was at the point at my lowest. I didn't want to live, but I couldn't die. Like I was just stuck, and I didn't know how do I get out of this? I would pray to God, I would cuss at God like constantly, this is God's fault. And so finally at the end, I got sentenced to the Salvation Army. And I didn't know what like the Salvation Army was. I never heard of like the rehab they had there. And so it was all foreign to me. I never been to a rehab at 49 years old. I didn't even know like I thought Salvation Army was a place where you go, and if you can't pay your light bill or something, you go say, "Hey, help me with my light bill." I didn't
I
know they
I
had
thought
these.
it was the place where you just dropped off old clothes you didn't want anymore either. I had no idea.
Right, right, yeah. Going into the Salvation Army, May of 2014, I was confused. I was old. My feet hurt. Yeah, I didn't understand nothing. I was just like, I felt like a pinball, just people the first time. That was the
Mm,
one they didn't bet on, and I only, yeah, that's how recovery is. It's a gift. Like
yeah.
I believe it's a gift. Like you, I think that I was so grateful. Like Salvation Army changed my life completely. That I could not stop giving back to that place. I graduated that program. I do whatever. I go in there. Do you guys need any help with anything? I was that grateful. What's a couple hours a week for this life that I've been given,
Right.
and I in turn, and I so then it started to do like process groups, big book studies. Like I was there for that. I'll sign up for that. I'm grateful for you when you show up. You're like a huge deal, and that's I tell them the price that I have to pay for this life I have today that was given to me is a lot cheaper than what I had to pay for before. I've been doing it for 8 years, and I get to see when I seen your post of you taking your kids to Disneyland.
Yep.
Like I get to see that, man, because I know the story. I get that's my heart just goes kaboom. Like I'm getting chills. That fulfills my heart more than anything. Like and I tell my class, I tell the class there, like on the flip side of that, I see a lot of death,
Yeah.
people relapsing. Like that's, I
And
mean,
and we should talk about that. The last 4 or 5 years, especially in San Francisco, but all up and down the West Coast of the United States, the street drugs have changed, right?
yeah,
It's a different kind of meth that's out there now. They call it, I think, P2P because they're not using ephedrine, and it seems to be driving meth-induced psychosis more. Illicit fentanyl is now replaced heroin on the street. If you go down to the Tenderloin in the city, you can't even buy black tar heroin anymore. Everything is illicit fentanyl, and they're doing all these terrible things like cutting it with benzodiazepines and all this awful stuff that just deepens the addiction. And I'm still trying to figure out why they're doing that. But as a result of all that, you're seeing overdose deaths spiking. You're
yeah.
seeing a lot more incidents of people in crisis on the streets. You know, when you talk about the deaths that are rising, what changes are you seeing out there on the street right now? Because I know you're out in the community, you're in Hunters Point, you're in the Mission. What are you seeing out there?
It's insane off the top of my head. Like I see a lot of insanity, especially where I live. But like my experiences are, yeah, death. My son is 37 years old. His two friends that he grew up with are probably like the sweetest kids. And yeah, they get out of prison or jail, they go use, and all of a sudden, him and his two buddies OD'd, and they're dead in a room because of the fentanyl. Like I asked my brother, like, what? My brother's 60 years old. He's still active. When I see him, I go, what's the deal on fentanyl? And the thing they say is, it's so good. It's so good. And my brother's, I don't want to mess with it because it's so good. It's instant. And like, I get it. It's like if somebody had OD'd from heroin and people were ODing from that heroin, a heroin user like myself wants that heroin.
Right.
Is that, and here we are with fentanyl, and God bless them. They're not suffering no more. I get it. I get it. They have families out there, that mothers and parents.
There's like a movement right now that's happening in this country that's trying to move away from abstinence-based treatment programs, or 12-step as being part of the treatment model for people struggling with addiction. What would you say to people that are advocating for a movement away from that? And we're not saying that other treatment models don't work, because I think harm reduction and abstinence-based treatment and 12-step can all work together hand in hand. But what would you say to those people that are saying a 12-step isn't treatment, it's not evidence-based, it doesn't help anyone, it forces you to accept God in your life and all those things? What would you say to them?
I would say that's dead wrong from my experience. I can only go by my experience. I replaced my heroin and my meth and my criminal life with a spiritual solution. And that's just how I am. I have a purpose in life. I didn't have a purpose in life before. What I would say to the I don't want to be offensive, but like to the doctors, the college students, the people that went to school for all this stuff like that, my experience is that me and you, we lived it, and that our experience is invaluable. Like we know, I'm a strong believer in addicts helping addicts. That's the only thing that I've seen. I believe like in the domino effect. I help you, you help others, and that's yeah. Maybe it's like a grassroots concept. I have to. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answers to big questions. Like I know what I know and how I get through the day, how I can help somebody else get through the day, how they can help maybe two or three other people get through the day. Like we have to start. That's just our part.
So tell me a little bit about, you talked a little bit about your life in recovery now, but tell me a little bit more about what you're doing and how's your overall quality of life now in recovery?
Oh, that's a good one. I have a beautiful life for that. My perspective changed. Like my gifts in my recovery are my family,
Hmm.
and my gifts in my recovery are watching people like Thomas Wolfe take his kids to Disneyland. That don't happen like in the lives that we came from. I focused on my kids. Money comes and goes, and I don't like I'm taken care of. Like I'm always going to be taken care of. I have a higher power that I believe in. I don't I'm non-judgmental on other people's higher power, because if I try to conform to somebody's higher power, I might get loaded on that higher power. It's personal to me. Like I have to believe in it. And I believe like giving back is what helps me keep this lifestyle I have, this life, is I have to constantly not forget where I came from, and I have to my like giving back. I get up, I'm thankful for the life I have. I I I pray the best of my ability. I go out, but I make sure I do the right thing every day.
I guess the last question I'll have for you is that what can we, as a state, as a community, as San Francisco, what do we need to do, or what can we do better to try to, I don't know, get more people into recovery, get them off the street? It's spiraling further and further out of control, and more people are dying. Do you have any opinions at all on what, let's say, San Francisco needs to do better to help people find that road, that pathway to recovery?
Yeah, I do. You can be prepared for when they're ready to change.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? Like
that does.
I couldn't change Thomas Wolfe when in the middle of his addiction until Thomas Wolfe was ready to be changed.
Yeah,
And I tell him I'm only here for the guys that want to listen to me.
yeah.
And that's like that's what keeps me going. I can't, as far as like you had mentioned harm reduction
Hmm.
and having like accessible syringes and needles and clean needles, that's fine and dandy. That was like to prevent like HIV, Hep C, like that stuff. harm reduction is just harm reduction. Like, to I don't know, unless they're gonna give them like needles and heroin, then I don't know.
Well, I
I
think I think that's eventually the goal. But, but aside from that, I'm not trying to bait you or anything into the
no.
benefits or the detractors of harm reduction. But I agree with you about we have to be ready. But I also believe there's a subset of people out there that need to be given a choice because they're committing crimes. That's the thing is you're going in and you're boosting. And if you keep boosting, and right now there's no consequences if you keep boosting. And look, the last guy I talked to last week said that he was on Skid Row, and he was like, yeah, 100% of the people that are stealing professionally are doing it to support their drug habit. And I just I don't see the idea of decriminalizing that because you want to reduce the jail
Oh,
population is actually fine. But if you're not going to offer those folks any type of accountability, then there's no incentive for them to even consider the possibility that they want to get help. And if you're already on the street, you can't just walk in because the resources aren't there, like you said, and say, I'm ready to go into detox and get clean. And
yep,
if you have a bunch of fentanyl in front of you, why would you?
exactly. Duh. Like what the what turned me to my recovery was the police officer being on my he was on my case constantly. Like, I wasn't gonna get away with nothing. I'm grateful for, like, when I did get clean and sober, I was like mad at all the police harassing me and all this stuff. But now that I got clean and sober and I have this life, I'm so grateful for them. They're just part of my journey to get here. All the foul stuff, all the bad stuff was just part of my journey for this life. But
Yeah,
I can't forget that every day. Like, I cannot forget that. Does that make sense?
it
I
does.
can't.
I hated the cops every time they arrested me too.
I
It's
hate
like,
it.
why are you bothering me, man? Leave me alone. And now in recovery, I'm grateful because I would be dead now because I was getting off the street just when fentanyl was hitting and I was already starting to use it.
Yeah.
Uh, the timing couldn't have been better in retrospect. It's 2020 hindsight. You don't see it when it's actually happening to you. You see it after
Yeah.
the fact.
So I wish I knew the solution to that.
Yeah.
And, I don't, but I know if Thomas Wolfe in recovery does his part, David Barrios in his recovery does his part in helping others to get out of that. That's like a grassroots thing. I
Yeah.
could do my part, you could do your part. I'm not God. I don't, pretend to like understand God's meaning about everything. But I know if I just, even if I just help one person, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Me too.
Like,
Me too.
give somebody back, and I feel like us in our recovery, it's our duty to show hope to other people that had suffered like us.
I like
And,
that. It's our duty.
and it's like me and you know that life. We know the the loneliness and despair sitting on the streets. Like, I can't get out of here, but you can. We're here to say you can. If nothing
That's right,
else,
brother.
it's
That's right.
possible.
It is possible. Recovery is possible. David, thank you so much for
Thank
coming on and speaking with me today. You're an incredible voice of recovery, voice for recovery. The time span that you have covered from the original opioid crisis with the pills all the way up to you found recovery is amazing. What you're doing right now to help that are early in recovery find that pathway is amazing. And you're a real like prophet for recovery here in San Francisco, man. And we're blessed to have you in this community. Thank you so much, David.
you.